Hello, everyone. My name is Briana Limon Cardenas. I'm part of the 2019-2020 Research Rookies cohort under the Academic Advancement Program, also known as AAP. Today, I will be sharing with my research project that I've been working on under this program. The title of my project is Reconnecting and Rejecting, a critique on colonial identities and students' path towards recognizing their indigeneity. So I'll be first kind of going down the breakthrough of this presentation. I'll be presenting my intro and background of my research question, theoretical framework, research method and approach, my findings, discussions and conclusions, future directions and limitations, and finally my acknowledgements. So I'd like to first start by introducing this concept of mestizaje. Mestizaje is a product of the sistema de castas, which is a hierarchy that was created to demonstrate the power dynamics between Black and Indigenous people and white people, or those people who were more in proximity to whiteness. So this hierarchy showcased Black and Indigenous people at the bottom, white people or people in proximity to whiteness at the top, and mestizaje was a product of that, right? Mestizaje is the colonial, violent, ethnic mixing of Indigenous and Spanish, right? Of Indigenous women being raped by white men, and it created this mestizo identity, right? Which usually is lighter skinned, which would be at the top of this hierarchy of the sistema de castas. So that's what mestizaje is. Mestizaje also encapsulates the process of nation-state formation and perpetuates Indigenous erasure. So here we can see the sistema de castas. This is the hierarchy. We see Black and Indigenous people, brown-skinned people at the bottom, and those who are white or more in proximity to whiteness at the top. Because of this concept of mestizaje, certain other colonial identities arise, such as Latina, Latino, Latinx, right? This identity that encompasses and creates a hegemony for all of the people who have origins in Latin America, right? So we're putting and grouping these people with vast amount of different indigenous backgrounds, with several different backgrounds, into one single pan-ethnic identity, right? And there's a problem with that because, again, it continues to perpetuate this erasure and this disconnection that Latinx students have and Latinx people have with indigeneity. Mestizaje is said to have an imperial durability, meaning that it has resonance in today's ways of structure, right? So not only did it have implications when it was created and established, right, but those enforcements continue to have durability today. There's still resonance and still have impact. And then the role of ethnic studies, right? How ethnic studies courses shift the discourse and include this discourse on mestizaje, right? That it's not critical enough and that it continues to perpetuate these erasures. And my research question is, how do critical ethnic studies involvement reshape the identities of socially classified Latinx students when mestizaje and Latinidad are critiqued and rejected, right? Critiquing this enforcement of mestizaje and the roots of mestizaje, and then rejecting these colonial identities that arise from it, such as Latina, Latino, Latinx, mestizo, Hispanic, all of these different colonial terms, right? That brown people connect with because of the lack of exposure to indigenous knowledges. My theoretical framework, critical race theory, is the centrality and intersectionality of race and racism, challenges the dominant ideology. There's a commitment to social justice. There's an importance of experiential knowledge and the use of interdisciplinary perspective. So all of these tenets were definitely incorporated in the lens that I used when evaluating the research that I came upon. So my methodology, a qualitative approach, and I did a literary analysis. I examined different research, existing research, right? Some of the concepts or keywords that I used when researching are mestizaje and Latinidad, both as concepts and identities, their origins and their implications. I looked into ethnic studies curriculums, right, their impacts and expectations, and indigenous pedagogy and curriculums, their impacts and importance. So ethnic studies curriculums, right, when they were first being fabricated, right, let's say, for example, Chicanx studies, they had their specific goals of being critical of colonial impositions and constraints and structures, right? But it's like, how do we go back to that and keep that spirit alive of being critical, right, of this importance of critiquing colonial impositions, so that we don't continue to perpetuate these knowledges that are in regular like history classes or whatever. You know, if we're creating this sector of an ethnic studies, then maintaining that critique is crucial. And then indigenous pedagogy, viewing them as important, right? Not centering Western European knowledges in our studies. Some of my findings, I broke them up in 3 themes. One of them being that mestizaje perpetuates indigenous erasure, as previously mentioned, and it should be critiqued and rejected in ethnic studies. Another theme is recentering indigenous knowledge is critical, right? There's a lot of studies that find that there's positive effects on ethnic identity and academic aspiration of Brown students who have exposure to their indigenous knowledges, or just indigenous knowledge in general, right? And viewing identity as resistance, right? This aim at liberation, this aim at self-determination and autonomy of Brown peoples is crucial, so that they're able to connect. And the role that ethnic studies plays in that, and the exposure that it gives them to then seek more knowledge, is important. So some discussions and conclusions, right? Shifting the discourses about indigeneity, the intentionality in the way that we reproduce knowledge in ethnic studies, so that we don't perpetuate and continue to perpetuate the disconnection that Latinx students have with their indigeneity. Understanding oppression and resistance to that oppression is crucial, right? So how do we give Brown students the tools to resist to oppression and to be critical of oppression? Because at the end of the day, self-determination, self-definition, and liberation are crucial to the ways that Brown students navigate academia and navigate themselves through the world in general. And again, indigenous aligned pedagogy and curriculums have positive effects on ethnic self-identity and improve academic aspirations of students categorized under the Latinx identity, giving these students the tools to be critical and to understand their true histories, their true narratives, and embrace them, and be critical of those who do not, right? Colonial constraints. Future directions and limitations. I'd love to conduct more pláticas and gather testimonios. This was one of the intentions that I had when I first started this research, but it wasn't able to be done. And I'll get further into that when I talk about my limitations. But gathering student voices is so important and critical to this work. And I will definitely continue to produce that, explore different lenses, frameworks, and methodologies that recenter Black and Indigenous people of color experiences, and explore the implications of other colonial impositions and constraints, that there's so many, like the border wall, and the impact that it has on Indigenous and undocumented people in the US. So some of my limitations, right? COVID was and is a huge limitation to my research. I had to move back home and lost access to literature and other connections. There's a struggle to conduct pláticas and get testimonials, again, connecting back to COVID. Time was a huge limitation, and some health issues that arise that prohibited me from continuing to do this work. Lastly, my acknowledgements. I'd love to thank the AAP Research Rookies Program and the mentors, Abir and Jasmine, for their support. My femtor Magali Campos, who's an amazing person and guided me every step of the way. Dr. Carolina San Juan, of course, the Eagle and the Condor Liberation Front, my homies who I organized with. Mi madre, mis antepasados, los presentes y los emergentes. My homies in La Familia Uriarte for their unconditional love. My family, my community of La Puente, the SGB 626. And all of those in struggle against colonial impositions. This project is for you. Thank you.